two shows that have earned a strange mix of cult following and mainstream appeal, garnering all the controversy you'd expect from these contrasting demographics, feature very little commentary on what's actually going on. Both shows are frequently called confusing, or deep, or pretentious even, but explanations as to what they are, what they mean, usually seem confused. As major fans of both shows, we hope to shed light on what the point of each is, and how that point is earned. In this process, we hope to illustrate why each is not as opaque as many of their critics often claim, or as ambiguous as many of their fans believe, and why both are deeply meaningful.
Both Hideaki Anno's Neon Genesis Evangelion and Nathan Fielder's The Rehearsal exhaust themselves in trying to be what their creator is looking for in life, with the artifice of both works slowly crumbling away at the end of both shows. Each tell the story of a character unquestionably based on their author. We can only assume that Anno and Fielder were trying to learn something about themselves and their place in the world through creating a simulated world of a work of art and exploring what their avatar within it could possibly learn. They both run in circles, finding nothing. The simulation does not seem to be helping either author, so what do they do? Well, they have their protagonists enter a situation much like they are in to see if they can find what they're doing wrong in their approach to creating their show. As both shows go down this rabbit hole of simulated realities within simulated realities, and we get further and further from real experience, we are able to come face to face with what is missing from them, what is most important in real life. With no more need for them, both shows end abruptly. What did they find though, and how did they do it?
The key challenge within the construction of each show is the concept of Evangelion's AT field. The absolute terror field is a metaphor for the insurmountable gap of understanding for each other that exists within people. The question being whether, despite this, our feelings about and for each other are ultimately valid. The AT field exists as a physical barrier used as both a literal and emotional weapon and shield throughout the duration of Evangelion, whereas in The Rehearsal, it is the prison of interpersonal conflict Nathan aims to jailbreak others from. They each share the same core action as the authors place themselves within their character's avatar to confront this challenge. This comes in the form of Third Impact and The Rehearsal, story devices that melt the AT fields, showing us engagement with external others divorced from this gap of understanding. However, the mechanism in each show, and largely why they are so good within this action of Third Impact and rehearsing, is that they exist as near complete design of their authors. As they seek to unravel their climax, pushing to some sort of answer, we watch the director of The Rehearsal, Nathan, and the sort of arbiter of Third Impact in Shinji cast a set of quote-unquote character representatives of their understanding of different people in their lives and the conflicts they pose within the AT fields between them. The conflict, overall action, and means of exploration within each show are largely the same.
Shinji and the character Nathan Fielder were created to help their creators discover how to bridge the gap of understanding, and so they can feel close to another person and maybe, just maybe, feel like they belong. Everyone else seems to feel like they can exist comfortably around others, which only drives Anno and Fielder away into their reclusive retreat of TV production. When you're making a TV show, you can control everything. Characters act how you want them to, whereas real people do not. The creators molded a representation of themselves, Shinji and, in quotes, Nathan, to act as a conduit to explore what they could learn from a world of their own design, a world they actually understand. Fielder creates The Rehearsal, a show about the messianic Nathan who comes to help people in emotional turmoil. This is who he thinks he could be if he did fully understand human interaction and could cross the bridge of human understanding. In a way, Fielder is rehearsing this role to figure out how to do it, to figure out what he is missing in human interaction. For 99% of either series, Nathan is unable to help anyone really, and Shinji is unable to be written into happiness in any logical or meaningful way. Fielder and Anno created these shows to find what they are missing in life and human interaction itself, but it isn't working. So, what are they missing from their way of figuring this out? To find out, they give their fictional avatars the kind of control they have to see if Nathan or Shinji could do it better. In the season finale of The Rehearsal, Nathan enters into a series of his own rehearsals where he gets to control every scenario, and in the series finale of Evangelion, Shinji gets the power to reshape the entire world. They essentially get their own chances to create a fictional world, just like Fielder and Anno did.
Nathan approaches human experience in a very rigid, technical way. He looks to define and control human experience, going to absurd lengths to do so. This is the entire basis of the humor in Nathan For You, the lengths Nathan goes to control human interaction. Here, it becomes a lot more personal. Nathan, as the nerdy, mathy boy that he is, sets up a sort of equation for his defined goal, meaningful experience. It goes something like this. Understanding or tangible experience plus X equals meaningful experience. Solve for X. Anno, through Shinji, takes the exact opposite approach. He isn't baffled that the pieces won't fit as he desperately tries to jam shapes into incongruent holes. He's unable to see the shape of the puzzle at all. Shinji isn't seeking the missing X. He's a melted puddle of emotions and insecurity, seeking the form of the equation. Nathan's rigidity and sense of control over everything is his frail coping mechanism or form of escape in avoidance of being Shinji. Shinji tries this early on in the show, but quickly fails. Yet, it is clearly written all over Nathan's face just how thin the line of control and stability he maintains actually is. And in his defensive AT field, he prevents himself from feeling real experience.
Episodes 25 and 26 of Neon Genesis Evangelion are often treated as an inscrutable enigma, but pretty much all of that confusion falls away when viewed from the lens of metaphorical TV production and Anno confronting what he is doing to himself in creating Evangelion. This perspective serves as a sort of skeleton key to the common misunderstandings of the finale. If you want to know what is happening within the universe of the show, you can just watch End of Evangelion, but the far more interesting presentation of these events and ideas lie in episodes 25 and 26, with its more layered approach. How these distinct but complementary levels of storytelling are delivered simultaneously is made clear by the final scene of episode 25. Shinji is finally told, albeit cryptically, what is going on. This is instrumentality, his chance to create a world he can be happy in, and all it takes is a wish. Notice Shinji's environment and positions within it though. There are shots of studio lights, Shinji is on a stage, Shinji's also an audience member. This is a one-man show of isolation. It is a show created by and for Shinji. He has the godlike power to shape this show in any way he sees fit, just like his creator, Hideaki Anno. Neon Genesis Evangelion is a show created by and for Anno. Moving into episode 26, Shinji is aware of the power he has and runs in circles trying to figure out how to use it. We are seeing the process of Anno creating the show in desperate hopes to find a path to happiness for Shinji, a path he could also walk himself. This part of the show can get a little confusing, but from this angle, it is entirely understandable. We see Anno putting another layer onto this method he has come up with for finding his desired path, making Shinji use the same method. We are seeing this route he is taking start to fold in on itself, with Shinji now running in circles in his mind trying desperately to create the same happiness Anno wants. The route of creating a TV show, of creating a new world as a simulation, is becoming a tangled mess. The editing of the first half of episode 26 is sporadic and disorienting as we never find a coherent thread to follow. With the words, "The only person who can sympathize with you and understand you is you, so be good to yourself," This knot Ano has tied himself in starts to loosen just a little. The technical proficiency of the art starts to decrease as we strip back these elements of the show's production that have been locking Ano into this dead end. We take it back to the beginning, to the most elementary stages of creation, as we see a sketch of Shinji floating in nothingness. This time, this process is approached critically. At each step of the process, we hear Shinji questioning what is happening and who he is at that moment. This scene details the formation of the literal and physical outlines of Shinji's being, the outlines that separate him from the world around him, the people around him, his AT fields. This coincides with Ano crafting the literal lines of Shinji, the character representative of himself in the world. In the assignment of the AT fields, we watch the logical path of lines of the ground allowing you to walk, physical reality of being, but more importantly, the derivation of the sense of self. We hear Ano finally questioning what is wrong with his method of trying to find a path of making this show. Shinji grapples with other people's roles in defining who he is. This has been the central question. He knows he needs others, but the only person who can sympathize with and understand him is him, so why does he need others? But with only himself in view, with that as his only reality, divorced from the tangible ground he walks on or the presence of others around him, he remains a blank face floating in air, no form to take. It's through the differences, the conflicts between the shape of others as reference points, a form of emotional ground to walk on, orienting him in space, that allows for him to visualize himself. It allows for the conclusion, I am me. I am me, but at the same time, it is true that other people make up parts of my heart. With these words, we are met with a very different Neon Genesis Evangelion. We watch Shinji, Asuka, and Rei as the central characters in a lighthearted slice of life series. It's a fun little sequence apart from some tropes, but it's not Evangelion. These aren't the characters we care about. It is a nice and valid world, but it's not a very meaningful one to us or the Shinji we follow. We zoom out and see Shinji reflecting on this world. In some ways, it is everything he ever wanted, but he doesn't want to be there. I am me, but at the same time, it is true that other people make up parts of my heart. These aren't the other people that make up Shinji's heart. They give him the validation he so desperately craves. That universe's Shinji has a loving family and several friends, but those people aren't the people our Shinji loves. This feels like a disingenuous fabrication to us and Shinji. But Shinji recognizes its validity, even if it is a reflection of Shinji's former desires. It is its own world, just not one our Shinji can exist within. The love he has for the people in his life can't exist in that world. These are not the people he loves, and they are not even separate beings from himself. If he were to love them and them alone, he would only be loving parts of himself while suppressing or loathing others. His love for the people in his life, for true others, are fundamental to his sense of self. This is how other people make up parts of his heart. It isn't that other people should or even could bestow upon Shinji a sense of self-worth, but rather that the emotions he feels towards these people are important parts of himself that are valid and therefore Shinji's valid. Instrumentality or making Evangelion could never be a path that leads to happiness because there was no one to even walk the path when those emotions had to be left behind. It is not despite, but because of the AT fields that Shinji is able to feel secure in himself. His feelings towards others are an essential part of who he is, and they cannot exist without other people, distinctly separate from himself. He cannot exist without other people. And if you agree, congratulations.
Neon Genesis Evangelion and The Rehearsal make for a strangely perfect pairing, since, contrary to the beliefs of those who totally missed the point, Evangelion is extremely clear in its definitions of ideas and how it shows us the process of absolving these as we flow to our endpoint. There's also the advantage of being culturally iconic for nearly 30 years and having endless internet nerd scholarship written about it. The Rehearsal is new. It's written off as a vaguely deep attempt from a Comedy Central writer, and it isn't given anywhere near the immensity of praise it so thoroughly deserves. So explaining the rehearsal in juxtaposition to Evangelion seems fitting. Nathan Fielder's work has always been meaningful. I stated earlier that the humor comes in its exaggerated efforts to define and control external reality, mostly in Nathan For You, which features a poignantly modern form of absurd humor. And it's humor specific to its era, specific to the youth of the era and the internet age. We showed our father the show and, well, he didn't get it. But after thinking about why for a second, we were wrong to be surprised. Absurd humor belongs to an era that knows everything. We live in a world where everything is understood, defined, and accessible. We don't even question the significance of events, opting to the mental deference of, if it's important, I'll hear about it later on social media. Or, this can't be a new thing, someone else must have already thought of, seen, or understood this. But with all of this knowledge and understanding, with the rules and outlines of the world so clearly in view, the pain in our inability to either do anything with it or to find beauty in discovery is displaced. Absurd humor is funny because it subverts that expectation. We laugh at how ridiculous breaking the ironclad rules feels. Nathan's mission of helping small businesses from its inception is purely a joke. Even with his absurdly generous means toward action, the only result he can ever achieve is humor founded in the effort it takes to overcome the banal reality, or founded in his mannerism breaking expected social convention. But much of what's compelling is his relatability, the inherent loneliness and sense of Herculean effort necessary in changing anything about the world or yourself in a world that's completely defined is something that many feel seen in. In Nathan For You's finale, Finding Frances, he unravels what he's been doing, and in feeling closeness to another person, in seeing change he can maybe affect between people rather than businesses, he pivots his focus. So, with the definition set up by Evangelion in place, let's explain the mechanics of the rehearsal. Much as Shinji opens Evangelion piloting the Eva to save the world, but more so to gain his father's approval and feel valid, Nathan opens the rehearsal with an explanatory episode of what this function of rehearsing will be. His aim, instead of trying to usurp capitalism's unstoppable force, will be to focus on something smaller, constructing human interaction. The irony is, he's wrong. This is not a smaller task, but one that will break him. In the first episode, we see the most true to intention effort at guiding the nebulous flow of human interaction by design. Perfect replica bar, flowchart software, lookalike actors, and all. It made sense, but was ultimately pretty useless. The reaction to Kor's confession was going to be defined in the gap of understanding between him and his friend either way. But we also get a crucial detail in this episode. Nathan was married. Something almost shocking in relation to the character we've grown attached to over the course of Nathan For You. The divide between Nathan Fielder, the man, and the character has always seemed non-existent, something he's gone to great lengths to enforce in the entirety of his public persona. In the notes of his upcoming show, The Curse, we see it will be about the struggles of being unable to have a child. With this, the pieces seem to come together a little bit. We see the relationship of Nathan the man to Nathan the character over the rest of the season as he slowly inches himself into the spotlight, making the main rehearsal, being a husband and a father, about him. Nathan's desire to manufacture interactions for others is more honestly his desire to understand them for himself. He can manufacture the perfect anecdote for Jimmy Kimmel and live through the actions necessary for it to not be a lie, but the feelings necessary for it to be true were never really within his scope of engineering. In the middle of the season, he prepares a man to confront his brother over inheritance and his brother's judgment of him. This never goes to its culmination. It never goes to reality. But Nathan finds the man resolved, regardless. It's maybe the most successful iteration of the rehearsal that we see. The moment wasn't reality, but the feelings were real. However, Nathan didn't understand or appreciate this. This section is written as a B-plot and quickly cast aside, framing intentionally to reflect Nathan's under-considered view of it.
In episode 4, we see Nathan attempt to teach his fielder method, his means of getting actors to play characters in a rehearsal to a group of young actors. From the point of view of a man who thinks he has it all figured out, teaching the next generation should be the most fulfilling culmination of a life. But Nathan doesn't have it all figured out. He just doesn't recognize the missing variable. Deep down, he's aware of it, but doesn't want to face the pain of his own feelings. Returning to Evangelion for a moment, in episode 16, as Shinji is lost in his own psyche within the Shadow Angel, the many sides of himself and perceptions of others interrogate him on his approach to life. Shinji is broken down with the scathing critique, "You can't live your life just linking the good moments like a rosary." Honestly, most people do live like that. We suffer through the bad so we can make it to the good. With no overarching meaning, Shinji always returns to despair and runs away when it's hard to see the next happy moment. He knows this is true but can't accept it. It's only when he thinks of his mother that he escapes. He can only escape his meaningless existence if he confronts all that he longs for in a mother. Getting back to Nathan, he starts breaking down a little, like Shinji, using his rehearsal technique to question himself from another perspective. Using his perspectives of other people to see himself, he starts playing one of his students to try to understand how others perceive him. But when his perception of himself never comes close to his students, he can't understand. Much like his students who only learned surface-level job skills their chosen target had, Nathan is losing touch with any sort of feeling within rehearsing. As he returns to a now 15-year-old Adam, he makes some changes for emotional realism, but ultimately feels nothing. His decision to turn back the clock and make Adam 6 again is such a melancholic watch because he's essentially killing the 15-year-old Adam. Obviously, all actors are okay here, and this wasn't a fleshed out character, but if the point of rehearsing is for it to feel real, then he should work on his relationship with the 15-year-old Adam because that is what a parent who has messed up but still truly cares would do. Nathan doesn't do that, and as we move into episode 5, we see what rehearsing has been about. The penultimate episode centers on Nathan's conflict with Angela over the religious upbringing of the fake child Adam after his parents told him he should raise Adam Jewish. Nathan's parents think of Nathan as a practicing Jew, but at several points in the episode, Nathan reveals he is by no means devout and does not participate in Jewish rituals and practices. However, he is under the impression that he has to raise Adam Jewish lest his identity be invalidated, because that would invalidate his parents' perception of his identity. Nathan wants so desperately to be affirmed as well as in control that he hijacks this parenting rehearsal for the sake of a religion he does not practice. Later on in the episode, when Nathan has to confront Angela, he is rehearsing for it, and the actress playing Angela screams at him, saying that he wants so desperately to feel something, but he never will. You can see him visibly shaken by this. Throughout Nathan for You, and in some moments during this show, we can see Nathan have emotions, but far more frequently, we see him as cold and uncaring. But which is the real Nathan? Who is Nathan Fielder? The episode ends with him being unable to voice his disagreement with the Jewish teacher's stance on the Israel-Palestine conflict. It's a very emotional issue, but Nathan folds. He thinks he did all this Jewish upbringing to stand his ground and express himself. In his silence, he realizes it was all in vain.
But the Evangelion parallel takes full force as the climactic episodes of each, the heightened point of meaning and coalescence of character and author levels of fiction come to fruition. Pretend Daddy opens up with Nathan, now the sole parent, running a birthday party full of actors that can't talk due to union rules in effort to save money. Recalling Evangelion, this is the most explicit point of stripping back fiction, as the TV production our authors use to recreate an easier path for themselves reaches termination. Evangelion also ostensibly ran out of budget and worked in simpler levels of animation, but ended up tying this together thematically to perfection. It also hints at our answers as Nathan watches Adam fully enjoying himself despite the silence. Nathan comments that usually in similar situations, dialogue is added in post, but the whole point here is to experience the lifelike moment, and post-production would completely ruin that. He almost gets it. In Evangelion, we actually get to see this fully post-production view as Anno was forced into making the end of Evangelion, and despite the more broad fanfare, the film wasn't nearly as strong for Anno. It was made for the fans. Enter Remy, who serves in a Kaoru-esque role. He's the kid Nathan admittedly connected to the most. And when production, the fictionalized world where he gets to pretend to be a daddy, feeling the joy in entering his child's naive, blissful world, running around the house, pretending to be dinosaurs and being told, "I love you," comes to an end, Remy can't bear it. Nathan embraced his role as the arbiter of his own world through TV production in an effort to figure out what went wrong in his attempt to create a reality he found happiness in having a loving family. The many-faced Adam became an idea more so than a set of real people to him. He unconsciously manufactured the AT fields in a stronger form than they naturally would have existed in. The gaps of understanding widen as the prospect of acting precludes truth in feelings between the characters engaging in the roles. With an understanding of this function, no real feelings are generated. It was the shortcoming of the rehearsal from the get-go. But with Remy, a 6-year-old child without a father, slowly realizing that he is missing something and being without a father, his pretend daddy meant everything. The feelings were real. It wasn't a rehearsal to him, or at least he didn't want it to be. Many fans of the show call Nathan unethical or a monster for manufacturing this situation.
But what they failed to see was that this was clearly not planned. He feels bad that he really traumatized this child. The rehearsal is understood acting, a precise approximation of human feeling to adults. But in the eyes of a child, Nathan's efforts to be the hand of God are hauntingly successful.
The conflict of Nathan not understanding what the X in our prior stated equation of meaningful experience was an honest one, and the rest of the episode will follow his truthful guilt, repentance, and eventual understanding following this process. The rehearsal has reached a dead end, and Remy forced Nathan to look back and see what he has been missing in both his initial reality and in the show where he tried to recreate the logic of it. He goes to see Remy and realizes how badly this really went. He realizes that Remy wasn't at all acting, and on some level, neither was he. After all, we know Nathan is divorced. Just like Remy, there is a hole in his family that he wants so desperately to fill. Maybe that desperation manifested as an immobilizing fear of screwing up. Maybe the hurt of his family being torn apart is too much for him to bear, and he would rather lose himself in the process of fitting the mold of what he could have done. We watch different iterations of the events with Remy unfold as he tries to use the same flawed process to understand what went wrong. Just as Shinji does, he questions the ultimate negative response, completely closing his heart to others. But it doesn't work. He feels uncomfortable recreating a colder demeanor towards Adam,
Yet, he still advises largely the same to the 9-year-old Adam in a puzzle of his own design where Adam is mockingly invited to a sleepover. Nathan's solution to his son to deal with others shunning and laughing at his desire for connection is to tell him to just say no. He tells Adam to fail the hedgehog's dilemma, to deny the value in connection with others, as the vulnerability and pain are not worth the risk. It's an explicit statement of character conflict and the failure in Nathan's perspective. But he doesn't see this as a shortcoming of the scene. Merely the fact that the situation is manufactured, rather, is the problem in his eyes.
In Evangelion, we saw a stripping back of production, leading to the sections of recreating the process of animation production, visualizing Shinji being drawn to mirror the recreation of a person's shape defined through their own, but also others', AT fields as they exist within our hearts. Nathan attempts similarly as he experiments with each different option that could have gone differently, playing around with different atoms of different ages and even simply a doll. But he's missing something. Was the problem the absence of Angela? He subjects himself to his own failures in the pseudo-co-parental relationship. Angela is purposefully picked for this show, in her extreme religiosity rendering her completely unreasonable. But we watch the show through the eyes of Nathan. She has to be unreasonable. We can't agree with her. We need to see his side. Nathan's lust for control superseded his ostensible efforts at genuine experience from the get-go. He manipulated Angela, he used her, and he goes to apologize for this. His apology is two things. It's an acknowledgement of the fault in his breakdown of his real-life marriage, and it's an apology for the incontrovertible incompatibility he designed Angela in from the get-go. She has to be perceived by the audience as totally unreasonable to maintain his artifice of control. He wanted to be right, to be in power, and he didn't want to understand Angela, or his wife, truthfully. It's a vital and powerful acknowledgement. It takes just a second of consideration to see. It's also a hard shift in
the direction of the episode. The initial design of the Angela rehearsal is the exact precise opposite of what he will achieve in playing Remy's mother over the remainder of Pretend's daddy until he isn't really playing. His authorial control over reality rendered a real person fake. But now we will watch the opposite as he no longer plays God, but plays human, making a fake person become real.
In returning to Remy's mother, she claims that Remy will be okay, but she can't logically define why to Nathan, and he is baffled. All she tells him is she sees herself in Remy's eyes. But he can't accept an answer without definition. He can't accept X equals feelings without a mathematical proof. So he looks to employ his Fielder method one more
time and become her. If seeing her in Remy's eyes can provide the assurance Nathan needs, why not see her reflection for himself? Forgiving yourself sounds so nice, but it's never that easy. Maybe from the perspective of another, he can do it.
This is a one-man show of isolation. It is a show created by and for Nathan. He has the godlike power to shape this show in any way he sees fit, just like his creator, Nathan Fielder. The Rehearsal is a show created by and for Nathan. In Pretend Daddy, Nathan is aware of the power he has and runs in circles trying to figure out how to use it. We are seeing the process of Nathan Fielder creating the show in desperate hopes to find a path to happiness for Nathan, a path he could also walk. He knows he is missing something, and if he just retraces his steps over and over and over again, eventually he will find it. Maybe if he views things from others' perspectives, he will see what they see. He will see how they can be okay.
In the final scene, Nathan, playing Remy's mother, is trying to see what she saw. He is trying to see Remy in her eyes. The scope of these rehearsals has grown far past Nathan's own experience. There is no Nathan character in this scene. He has completely lost himself.
But that's wrong. The situation he is modeling here is not one Nathan ever saw. The way he is playing Remy's mom is a part of him, and the Remy here is an actor under his direction, another part of him. Caught up in this scene and not even realizing what he's doing, Nathan is actually doing some self-reflection. As the Remy before him, the Remy in his head, asks why Nathan would do what he did, Nathan, playing the part of a loving mother, gives a perfect answer.
A loving mother giving a perfect answer to her child isn't exactly revolutionary, but as he keeps talking, the answer becomes too perfect. It extends a level of understanding of Nathan that could only come from inside Nathan's mind.
The only one who can sympathize with and understand you is you.
As he is telling the Remy in his head that everyone makes mistakes, that the rehearsal was a mistake, and it is okay to feel sad because that is a completely valid emotion to feel given the circumstances, he is seeing something he never knew was there.
He succeeded in seeing what Remy's mom saw in Remy's eyes. She saw herself, and Nathan sees himself. His answer to why Nathan would do what he did is too perfect because it is Nathan himself answering.
He acknowledges the similarity between himself and Remy. As he speaks to Remy, he speaks to himself, validating the emotions he is feeling. Nathan could never understand the feelings within others. He could never solve for X because he refused to validate his own feelings.
When it is pointed out to him that he broke character, that he acted genuinely as Nathan, he sits in silence for a moment where he realizes the significance of that. These characters he was playing were all parts of him, but they always rang hollow because he rang hollow.
The reason Remy's mom could understand her son is because she could understand herself. And when she felt a connection with Remy, she could feel what he feels because she could trust her own feelings.
Nathan could never do that before, but now that he can, he abandons the character he was playing. What the fake Angela said to him isn't true. He can most certainly feel a lot, but he could never validate those feelings. He could never recognize their truth. Because of that, there was nothing left of him.
That is why he has been a shell we have seen these personalities and characters inhabit. By understanding and validating his own feelings in that moment, that shell is filled with who he genuinely is, and he finally has a self to forgive.